It's very confusing, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? We've heard so many versions of the same event. We've had witnesses pop up like mushrooms after a damp spell. We've had testimony given as truth and then recanted time after time. Has this been a thorough examination of the facts, or just a series of clever diversionary tactics perpetrated by the defense to so muddle things that the only thing you can possibly be left with is reasonable doubt? The one thing they need to win acquittal for B.J. Walker. Well, of one thing there can be no doubt. B.J. Walker is a troubled woman. A woman who ran away from home as a girl, pretended to be a boy for a while, and ended up under the care of a psychiatrist. B.J. Walker is a woman who is clearly attracted to older men. First Frank Goodman, and then having killed him, Warren Lockridge, who, though he's still alive, has already been stabbed once by the defendant. If B.J. Walker attacked her boyfriend during a kiss, is it so hard to imagine her shooting Frank Goodman for molesting her since childhood? And although all we've heard is the biased hearsay of witnesses for the defense, I am willing to give B.J. Walker the benefit of the doubt on one point: that Frank Goodman molested her, as he did Sally Baldwin. But does that give her the right to kill him? First she said she didn't. Then she said it was possible that she did. And now she would like us to believe that Frank Goodman committed suicide by shooting himself in the armpit. Have you ever heard of suicide being committed this way? Does it make sense that a trained policeman would commit suicide by shooting himself in the armpit? A forensics expert testifying for the defense has said that BJ's version of Frank Goodman's death is possible. Well, I say it is highly improbable. And as for her memory suddenly returning, I find it interesting that her memory suddenly and conveniently returned every time new sworn testimony backed her further and further into a corner. Ladies and gentlemen, do not fall victim to the Byzantine manipulations of the defense, because the central question of this trial has always remained the same. Did B.J. Walker shoot and kill Frank Goodman? And despite the seemingly endless, contradictory defense and testimony, the evidence proves that B.J. Walker did indeed shoot and kill Frank Goodman in cold blood. I therefore urge you, in the interest of justice, to return a verdict of guilty.
I actually agree with Mr. Arnold. I think that this trial has been confusing and somewhat contradictory. But despite that, Mr. Arnold has just admitted that he believes that B.J. was sexually molested as a child by Frank Goodman. It was this one sickening set of events that set this chain of events that swept B.J., her family, her friends, into this nightmare that brings us all into this courtroom. Let's look at this a minute. Frank tried to rekindle this abusive relationship with B.J. She refused. He then retaliated by trying to divide up her family. That didn't work. Well, now his obsession becomes desperate. And he kidnaps B.J.'s mother, Jody Walker, and her friend Cruz Castillo in an attempt to blackmail B.J. into intimacy. This plan failed as well. So you see, there's only one thing left for Frank to do. And alone in the desert with his victim, he perpetrates perhaps the worst abuse of all by forcing her to watch him die. Now, naturally, this incident is so horrifying and so traumatic that it leaves B.J. nothing else to do but block it from her mind in order to simply survive. Now, the prosecution is trying to make it look like B.J. is a mental basket case. that she distorts and she reinvents the truth in order to suit her own purposes. But you have heard testimony from her own psychiatrist that says this is simply not the case. Not only that, but the prosecution has offered no expert witness to say otherwise. Now, it is a fact that BJ was suffering from hysterical amnesia. This was her mind's way of protecting her from the horror of watching a man die. BJ has been sitting in this courtroom. She has heard testimony against herself, and something unlocked in her mind that made her remember that it was Frank Goodman who shot himself. Now, I really have to point this out, that the prosecution, with all of his huffing and puffing, has done nothing to prove otherwise. Now, I admit, the most damaging testimony to my case came out of BJ's own mouth, when she remembered that she was holding the gun, and she assumed that she killed Frank Goodman. But did she keep this to herself? No, she blurted it out into the entire courtroom. Is this the behavior of someone hell-bent on covering up a criminal act? No, it is not, ladies and gentlemen. BJ Walker is not a murderer. She's a victim. And not just a victim of Frank Goodman, but a victim of a legal system subverted by the zeal to win a case at the cost of individual justice. Mr. Arnold has railed at the unorthodox nature of this case. But I ask you, is the truth always that cut and dry? No. Is the truth always that easy? No. You know that. You know that from your own experiences. Please don't let this trial be yet another, or perhaps the final blow that destroys this young girl's life. And for heaven's sakes, don't let Frank Goodman abuse her from his grave. You must do the right thing. You must do the just thing. You must set BJ Walker free to live the happy, normal life that Frank Goodman denied her the minute his hand touched her body and stole her soul. Thank you.